Magic behind the scenes, from candid discussions about unique filmmaking processes to in-depth technical exploration.
Join us in unraveling the intricacies of filmmaking one episode at a time. It's more than just cameras and lenses over here. We aim to inspire, educate, and empower as we peel back the curtain on the art of effective storytelling.
Thanks for joining us.
All right. As a DP, I know purchasing gear can kind of be a nightmare. Whether you're talent or crew, finding technical solutions to any of your problems can be very challenging. And what's even harder is knowing where to go. So we have an answer for you. Head over to BandPro, one of our incredible sponsors here at CFA. Whether you're looking for high-end cameras and lenses or looking for guidance on what is needed to get started on this equipment journey of yours, BandPro has the gear and team that you need to thrive in your own career.
They are the exclusive representative of Ingenue's complete cinema line for all of North and South America, and their customer support is fantastic. Not only do they have a great team to answer any product question you might have, but they also have a talented team of in-house technicians that you can actually talk to get your equipment back up and running.
Which is really important, especially if you're on set. So.
Yeah.
Bonus. Go to bandpro.com or stop in at their location in Burbank, and please make sure to say hi from CFA because we love them so very much. Yeah, hello. Thanks, everyone.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first interview of the day for our final day of filmmaker interviews here at AFI FEST 2023. I am Haley Royal, your host of Cinematography for Actors podcast. This is my co-host today. I get Jack. You guys all know that I love when I get Jack. And we're so excited to be sitting here with the filmmaking team of Go for Grandma. I have sitting next to me Eli Cohen, the producer. I have Sabrina Doyle, the director, and Maximilian, Jack, say it? Schmige, who was the DP on this project. Hi, guys. Thanks for sitting with us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So good to have you.
So we heard right before you showed up, Sabrina, that you did shoot this in New York, and we were discussing the difficulties of shooting in New York. What would you say was the most challenging part of that? Because it seemed like there are many challenges we are not faced with here in Los Angeles.
Can I ask very quickly, because we just had the benefit of watching this, but unfortunately some of our viewers definitely have not, because AFI Fest is your world premiere. Mm-hmm. Can you give us the log line really quickly of your movie?
I forgot.
No worries, no worries. I'm fresh. This is my first interview of the festival so far, so I'm fresh.
Oh, I will read it.
No worries.
I'm going to give the log line. Go for Grandma. Go for Grandma is a short film inspired by the iconic 80s fantasy films we all grew up with. On Go for Grandma is a magical journey into the mind of a young boy who escapes a traumatic home life through the power of his imagination. And you know what? Let's cancel the New York question. I want to talk about the imagination, and I know that you have a question about that.
Yeah, I mean, so the imagination is such a huge part of this short, but the VFX you use to craft that are beyond incredible. I mean, they're tied so seamlessly into the story in a really wonderful way. What was the VFX process like, and how did you work, especially as a DP, around shooting around preparing for that in the city of New York, in such a confined space?
Yeah, so Max and I, Max shot it. Max and I storyboarded really thoroughly, so it started with the storyboards. We had a great storyboard artist, Marcus, and did very detailed boards for every single VFX scene. I don't usually do that for the other scenes, non-VFX scenes, but for the VFX scenes we wanted sort of detailed boards that we could share with the team that everyone would see. So everyone knew what the shot was, and that was really important to get everyone on the same page. So you and I spent quite a lot of time in our Airbnb in New York doing that. And then we had Pat McClung, who's a veteran on-set VFX supervisor on set with us, which was amazing, kind of, pointing out our mistakes to us. He's been at it a long time. I think he started on The Abyss way back in the day, so has been doing this a long time. We had several VFX scenes. We had the Wall Street one, which was relatively straightforward in a way, because that was just shooting background plates, right? I guess, maybe you want to talk about the blue screen stuff and that, because that was more complicated. But the Wall Street stuff, we have a dragon flying down Wall Street, and then we have a kind of river gushing down Wall Street. And really just that was a question of getting the plates. And to your question about sort of challenges of New York, one of the challenges is controlling traffic, and we were on Wall Street and getting intermittent. The only permit you can really get in New York is intermittent traffic control. So they won't shut down the street for you.
Right.
So they basically say, okay, the light's red.
You
You've got to.
go.
We'll give you an extra minute. Go. And then it's up to the it's up to the cop if you're like a bit longer because the shot's still going. But then they can say stop at any point,
Right.
and then you reset and wait for the traffic light to change again.
I have to say we were pretty lucky to film on Wall Street and water, and
Yeah.
we did have cops on either end of the street, and we could extend it, but to see the entire city block being stopped for filming for us was
Right.
something quite incredible
For a
to
few
see.
minutes, yeah. I do have a question to jump off of that as well. So you can't control the traffic. You did have a fire truck come through. Was that a hired truck, or was that just like a big surprise and you were like, this is perfect?
No, this was all planned. Like,
Okay.
We had to plan the route. We had to find a space where to park the fire truck, and it had to
Right.
make a huge loop because New York has
Oh
very
my
narrow
goodness.
streets,
Right,
and to get
right.
it around
Slow
had a
loop.
specific route. And there were quite a few logistical elements in making this film happen. From a VFX perspective, incorporating various different elements from the apartment, which was partially built on set, but also practical, with the grandmother's side being
Right.
actually on location, but then also having to match the reverse on the kid, because we couldn't have the kid leaning outside the window in New York, so that's actually on stage. So there's so many elements between stage, practical, VFX, and blue screen that all came together from a production perspective. We had the blue screen elements that we talked about, having the scene with the horse in the school, also the living room turning into an ocean sequence.
Yeah.
So there was quite a few pieces that all had to come together the correct way. So it involved several meetings with Sabrina and I, with the VFX supervisors, and kind of like coming up with a really good plan how to execute it, and luckily we were able to do it.
And not only, I mean, I don't want to sleep on the VFX, specifically you're talking about it at Wall Street. The kind of river sequence, I was like, jaw on the floor when the water first comes out, and then as soon as it's between the sidewalk, I was like, really? I mean, beautiful. But you also, you had a stunt, it seemed, at least with the biker and a taxi, that was that while you were on Wall Street?
That was on Water Street.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was on Water, yeah, okay.
so just off Wall Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And you also had another water scene that I would really like to discuss. There's a flood. Is that a flood in an actual apartment? How did that happen? What were the logistics of this?
That was so in order. I don't think anyone would let us insure their fancy New York apartment and allow us to flood it. So no, we built a set precisely so that we could flood it.
Okay.
So we built the set inside a water retention tank. So the whole set was built inside a tank,
Right.
which was basically sort of wood lined with plastic. Basically, it wasn't a sort of super duper tank. That was basically it. But it was still built inside a tank. And then then the set build, all of that. The whole set stayed inside the tank for the whole of construction and then production, and then right on the last day we flooded it, because obviously in flooding it we were ruining the set,
Right, can't go
and we
back.
didn't have a second set. So on the very last day we flooded it and shot the water scene.
So during the scene, there is the practical flood, but then there's also VFX water. He imagines he's in a different place, and there are two actors in this scene, and I'm wondering, as you're switching back and forth between practical and then between the imagination, what sort of conversations are you having with your talent to make sure they know what is happening when, and so that they're on the same page tonally?
Tonally, so in terms of tone, you mean escalating the rage and the kind of and
when
imagining what's
things-
behind them.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, I have to say I'm so impressed with our young child actor Austin, because
He's wonderful.
yeah,
He's really
Magnificent.
I mean, one, because he's so emotional and he's so emotionally vulnerable, but two, because he did something that technically was really hard, which was we told him there were going to be all these imaginary elements in the frame, and like that scene, which kind of, you know, in some respects in that scene we did blast him with water, so we sprayed him. So we didn't spray him. I mean, I wish we'd sprayed him more, but which is really mean of me. But every time you spray him, he gets wet, and then there's a reset time,
Right.
and you know you have to blow dry his hair and change his clothes. And we, in the end, we couldn't get him that wet because the reset time would have been too big.
Yeah.
But he was getting wet, and they were getting it. So they did kind of, they had some physical when he was shivering, he was really shivering because we wet him, but he was but in other scenes he was so great at imagining things that weren't there. I mean, we had a tennis ball on a C-stand, didn't we? And we said, "This is the dragon, follow him." And he was like, you know, that expression of wonder that he has when he sees the dragon is a tennis ball on a C-stand.
So believable.
And you know, the seagull, there was no seagull there. Did we have a piece of tape for the seagull? Maybe.
I think there was also a tennis ball on a
There's
C-stand.
also a tennis ball.
The universal
Yeah.
tennis ball for VFX.
A tennis ball.
It is.
Every
It is.
actor
do
has
it.
to learn how to react to a tennis ball. It should be part of the training.
It has been everything from dragons to a seagull to
Yes.
whatever.
And this was his first film, and so to have him be able to kind of, you know, I mean, obviously you know, actors thrive when they have a great scene partner, and he had amazing scene partners. Amy Madigan came in on her days off, just so that she could read with him, which was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, so she, you know, when he did really well when he had amazing scene partners, and he had amazing adult actors to react off of. But he also, like, his own imagination is so rich that he was able to kind of really imagine that dragon and imagine that seagull. So I was, you know, he was really impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned this alleyway shot, and I want to touch on that before we end. Because, you know, at CFA we talk a lot about collaboration and bridging the gap between talent and crew. And you had 2 days, or at least shot it in 2 days, that the alleyway scenes. What were kind of the challenges, and how did you use communication and work with the crew and talent to get that done in 2 days?
You start.
So we shot in over 2 days, in as much as we shot, so everything, so just for the viewers, there's a scene in which a boy leans out of his window in New York, and then on the other side of the alleyway, his grandmother's leaning out of her window, and they're having a conversation via walkie-talkie. And it's a New York alleyway, maybe 30 foot wide, something like that. So we shot everything in the boy's bedroom, looking in and looking out. Everything in his bedroom was shot on the soundstage, and we built that set. And then the grandmother's apartment was in a real New York alleyway. And so we shot that conversation in 2 parts. His side on stage, on set, and her side in an actual real New York alleyway. And so they were, you know, getting the continuity of that, sort of like lighting continuity, blocking continuity, but also emotional continuity, because they were shot on 2 very different days, was a real challenge. And we kind of, it was something we were really worried about. And it, you know, it cuts together. I mean, it's sort of credit to our editor Banner that it cuts together so well, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, the communication was tough because we had crew on 2 sides in 2 different locations, quite far away. I mean, and we had a big crew, like, because we were lighting for night exteriors on that. And it was,
it was a big challenge from every aspect on this film. Like, it's not a small production what we were trying to achieve here. From trying to match the performance, trying to match the lighting on stage for dusk, for night, you know, for the sunset shot with the dragon. There were quite a few elements that all had to come together later in post. And I think a lot of the communication, not only between us, but also between the crew, has to happen. So they understand what has to match, what the lighting has to match, the camera movement has to match, the framing has to match. Like, there's so many little pieces. And often, like, the best way is just to repeat it as often as possible, to explain as often as possible, in the hopes that everybody's on the same page. Yeah. And that's how it kind of came together.
This is an example of how everyone on set matters, because we're in a location where you're so spread out and there are people all over the place, and you can't just sort of say to someone, hey, you know, everyone's communicating on walkie. I think this is an example of how everyone on set, like, doing really good walkie communication really matters, and kind of sort of, so that you can say to someone who's 2 blocks away, this is happening, you know, lock it up, you know, here. And so I mean, everyone on the set is really important at that
Yeah.
point. And so, we did that with varying degrees of success.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a learning curve, right?
I mean,
Sometimes
it's always
we pulled it
challenges.
off, sometimes-
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. We're working with a child actor who can only be on set for so many hours,
Right.
so we have the limitation. We
Right.
can't work like even 10 or 12 hours with the kid.
Yeah.
We only had him for, I think, 6 hours in front of camera and 8 hours on the day.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get a lot done in a very limited amount of time.
Thank goodness he was good,
Yeah,
right?
really. Yeah.
Ron, I would really like to know, as producer, was there anything when you saw this script, when you came onto this project, that you were ready to go to the mat to get rid of? Was there anything that was like just too much for you? And I would also like to know if you're surprised by anything you didn't think you were going to be able to save that actually ended up being saved. Feel free to use my mic.
Hopefully this isn't a sore spot of something that you
No.
ripped out of the
I
I'm
actually
ready for
came on
unboxing.
to the project late.
Okay.
So I came on in post, so
Got
the
it.
script and film was shot, so we kind of shaped it in post. But no, honestly, by the time I came on, the script was shot, everything was shot. I don't think we made a ton of changes in the edit from when I saw it.
No, I mean, look, I mean, the challenge, Ron basically has shepherded us through a very complicated VFX process. The film came together, the VFX part of the film really came together in post. We didn't have our vendors lined up before we shot, and so all of that happened after Ron came on, and that was a whole odyssey in itself. That was the whole VFX process was like being in production, wasn't it?
was a lot.
very long being, and so that's kind of what was interesting about. Maybe you can talk about that, because I mean, at that point we could have dropped VFX sequences, for example.
We could have dropped. I mean, what was interesting was seeing, because you've seen the film. I mean, I think out of a 20-minute, 30-minute film, 15 is VFX.
Yeah.
So it was interesting seeing how much those VFX shape the story, and the decisions you make, how much they could change and shift the story. So that process was a bit back and forth of what is a dragon going to look like?
Yeah.
What is a Wall Street? So it wasn't so much trying to pull things out as much as get them in.
Just
kind of the reverse.
so, I mean, sounds like a smooth situation, and like you were kind
I
of
wouldn't say smooth,
ended
but
up
it was
being a
great.
blessing.
Well, it came off smooth.
It
The
really
end
did. It
product
came
is-
off
is
beautifully.
wonderful, and I wish we had an infinite amount of time to
No.
talk about this, but
But we have to
Fortunately, we do
wrap
have to
it
wrap
up.
up.
We do. You screen today at 11 a.m. and it is the world premiere here at AFI Fest. So if you're at the festival, catch it. Highly recommend. Jack and I are
absolutely
big
absolutely.
fans now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Join us in bridging the gap between talent and crew. Start by subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. Sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date on vendor discounts, community events, new podcast releases, and you can educate yourself through our free course releases on YouTube.
It all starts at cinematographyforactors.com, and if you like this episode, consider leaving a review to make it easier for fine folks just like yourself to find us. We have some super exciting news. CFA has teamed up with We Make Movies to offer you a discount on production management services, including access to comprehensive production insurance, workers' comp for your next shoot. All you have to do is visit wemakemovies.com/insurance and use code CFA23 on your intake form for 10% off your quote.
Also, we've just partnered with We Audition, which I'm sure you know I'm very excited about, to offer you 25% off your membership. Use code CFA25 to get that membership for only $7.50 a month or $75 a year.